I can't begin to count how many times I've heard people claim that a nuclear bomb ruined their woodworking tools. Take this recent video, for example. It taught a fascinating lesson in the history of steel making and how modern tools are actually better, despite what many people claim about the quality of 100-year-old chisels and planes and knives. If you haven't seen that video yet, I think you'll really enjoy it. I'll put a link to it at the top of the comment section below. But as always occurs in any conversation about how steel has changed over the years, I received many comments from those who believe that an explosion in New Mexico changed our steel forever, rendering any tools made after July 16, 1945, inferior to older pre-World War II versions. It's a common belief that radiation has just tainted the world's steel. Irradiated steel might be ideal for making radiators, but not for knives and chisels and other edge tools. If you believe this, you've fallen for one of the most common myths on the internet. Pre-atomic purity simply does not exist as far as the quality of tool steel is concerned. Now, before you run to the comments to argue, and I know some of you will, hear me out. When the atomic age began with the first above-ground nuclear test in the summer of 1945, radioactive isotopes were released into the atmosphere and they eventually spread globally. Everything was covered in these microscopic particles. Now you might wonder how this fallout would affect future steel without also tainting the existing steel. Well, the argument is that during the manufacturing of new steel, particularly when using the Bessemer process, open air with all those radioactive isotopes is blown into the molten metal. So it's not a matter of radiation seeping into the steel from the outside. It's literally injected and mixed throughout like poison in a cake batter. But before you start looking for 100-year-old cakes, consider background radiation. This describes the amount of radioactive isotopes that already existed in the atmosphere before the first atomic test. It includes billions of years of cosmic rays striking the planet, all the radioactive elements that are naturally present in soil and rock, and the trace isotopes that have always existed in every living thing. Together, these contribute to a background radiation, or a baseline, that has always existed on the planet. Now, even during the peak years of nuclear testing in the 1960s, there was an increase over this natural baseline of only about 6%. And those levels quickly dropped after the Partial Test Ban Treaty of 1963. Today, man-made increase over those background levels is almost 95% gone, and it has been for decades. Radiation has always existed in steel, but the increased radiation found in modern steel from the atomic age is barely measurable, nowhere near enough to change its tool-making properties. And that's not the only reason this is a myth. While the Bessemer process did blow unfiltered atmospheric air into steel, that process was mostly ending before the atomic age began. By World War II, steelmakers were largely using closed systems with pure oxygen, free from the radioactive isotopes and other impurities found in open air. And since then, more advanced techniques don't use air at all. The bottom line is, atomic testing may have added trace amounts of radiation to the atmosphere, and some of it may have made its way into steel. But unless you're making sophisticated scientific equipment, this is a non-issue. The amounts are so negligible that it has no effect whatsoever on the quality of edge tools. On the other hand, since World War II, there have been huge leaps in the quality of steel through better manufacturing, the development of high-tech alloys and modern heat treatments, even cryogenics. We live in a golden age of tool making, and it's not just about good quality, it's also about good ideas, like this one. This changed my table saw. I'm not kidding. It made my small job site saw so much safer and easier to use. My rip cuts became crisper and straighter. It became easier to cut lumber of all sorts, including sheet goods. I no longer have to worry about workpieces flipping up at the end of the cut. My dados and grooves and other joinery are more accurate, and most importantly, I'm far less worried about getting a dangerous kickback. All of these benefits came from a single attachment that pops on and off with ease. It's called the Bow Extender Fence System, and it's made by a pair of entrepreneurs named Keith Bow and Bill Fadali. This fence system takes compact table saws and even bandsaws to levels I have never seen before. It's based around a thick, durable, precisely straight aluminum extrusion. Now I have a significantly longer reference surface to guide my cut. This makes longer rips much easier to manage, and it really helps guide my sheet goods, which are notoriously difficult to cut on a short fence. You can also adjust the extrusion if you want more guidance on the infeed side or the outfeed side. And you can even position it like a European fence so it ends just ahead of the center of the blade and gives your crappy construction lumber some relief to avoid blade pinches and potential kickbacks. But it gets even better when you add the optional stock supports to the bottom. Now, large and long workpieces are much easier to manage without the need for a large outfeed table or roller stands. It's the perfect portable solution, fully adjustable for whatever your needs are, wherever your needs may take you. This may be the single biggest upgrade I have ever made to a small saw. It ends most of my frustrations, and it makes me feel like I'm back in the shop with my larger cabinet saw. My cuts are easier, they're more accurate, and they're safer. I don't think I'm ever going to use my contractor saw without this again. I really think the bow extender fence system is worth checking into for your table saw or bandsaw. Use the link below this video and check out the bow extender fence system for yourselves.